want them to answer from our panelists. So I would like to start by asking our panelists to briefly introduce themselves. Adam, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me today, guys. My name is Adam Cowherd. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called AmplifyX that allows musicians to raise capital for a piece of their future royalty revenue, which allows everyday people and fans to invest into them, giving them access to another type of alternative asset class.
Thank you, Adam. iKechukwu, would you like to take over? Okay, Diego, you can go next.
Thank you so much. I introduced myself an hour ago, so hopefully people aren't tired of my voice already, as I am. But my name is Diego Farias. I am the founder and CEO of Amuse. Amuse is a modern record label and distribution platform based in Stockholm, Sweden. We do really cool stuff with music technology. Check us out, amuse.io.
Thank you, Diego. And of course, for the people that recently joined, it will be greatly appreciated. Dan, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you so much for having me, everyone at Insight and the Future of Music. Also very happy to be virtually seated beside Adam, Diego, and iKechukwu. My name is Dan Rutman. I'm the director of US and Canada for Tunecore. For those who are unfamiliar, Tunecore is one of the first premier DIY music distributors in the world. We operate on a per release model where artists are charged per release per year to use our services, which is uploading to over 150 stores worldwide. We have great analytics, great accounting. Artists retain 100% of their revenue, 100% of their rights. Yeah, it's a great service. And yeah, I'm happy to be here with everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Do we have, okay, so to start off, I would like to ask the first question. So have you noticed any shifts in specifically music production given the pandemic? Dan, would you like to take this one?
Sure. Yeah, I think we absolutely have. While the pandemic was like truly awful, you know, there's been some bad stuff that's happened. There's some upsides too, and some opportunities as well. I think one of the more obvious upside was that a lot more people were at home. Musicians were at home, staying at home, and they had a lot of time to do things that they usually wouldn't do, which was producing and making music. Tunecore was lucky to, I think, see explosive growth through 2020, and we're continuing to see that through 2021. And speaking with other companies that cater to creators, they've also had a fantastic year. I think one thing that we're seeing is that the top and mid-tier artists might be more hesitant to release music because there's a worry around touring and making money. But for the middle and lower tiers, it feels like, and it'd be cool to have everyone weigh in, but there's no more ideal time. Fans are stuck at home, they're looking at their phones, they're hungry for content, blues music. And so because TuneCore caters to such a large part of the DIY community, that growth in music production has been really significant. And I think as things start to open up, we might expect that trend to naturally dip off. But hopefully enough people have invested time and money that they're starting to see the results, and they'll continue to keep making music and producing music and distributing music.
Oh, thank you, Dan. iKechukwu just arrived. Hi, iKechukwu. How's it going?
Hi there, everyone. Yes, I'm fine. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me here today. It's an exciting panel, some other great industry experts and companies. So yeah, this should be a real exciting conversation.
Thank you, iKechukwu. Can you please introduce briefly?
Yes, so my full name is iKechukwu Onuorah. I'm a Nigerian, based out of the UK and Nigeria, and I'm the director for the Orchard in Nigeria, which simply just means overseeing the day-to-day activities across the country. A lot of the times when people think of Nigeria today, they only really think of one particular state, which is Lagos State. But Nigeria has 36 states, over 500 different dialects. And so it's quite a unique and interesting landscape. So my role is really to figure out, taking baby steps, how we as a company navigate throughout that terrain and gradually start to introduce our services, and at the same time educating people on the importance of distribution and the opportunities that comes through that.
Oh, thanks. Thank you for your introduction. For the first question we had, if you guys have noticed any shifts in specific music production, iKechukwu, would you like to carry on taking this question?
Well, yeah, I mean, COVID, no matter what, as far as I'm concerned, COVID has, apart from the disease and, you know, that the sad side of it, from an industry point of view, it's also introduced a number of great opportunities. I kind of look at it almost like when Napster came in the late 90s and shook the foundations of the music industry. But really what we saw post that was organizations, a lot of entrepreneurs were able to adapt. They probably adapted a lot much more quicker than the bigger conglomerates. But you know, COVID has brought its challenges, and for most artists who had probably prior to that planned out their release schedules and campaigns and got very excited about what 2020 had to offer, COVID gave everyone a good slap in the face and said, you know, let's all just pause, reprogram yourself, start from ground zero. And it gave a lot of, I was seeing a lot of artists almost looking into their back catalogs. All of a sudden music developed a more conscious side, something that we probably haven't seen since the 60s, when you had whether it was music that was coming out because of wars or injustice or oppression. There was just a number of things that were going on, and you know, last year we had a number of the different kind of marches that were going on, so people's minds were already shifting in a conscious state. COVID coming along meant that artists, writers developed a new kind of voice, and in my personal opinion, it became quite refreshing. It's taken a while for everyone to kind of adjust to the challenges and see the opportunities, but you know, the industry is gradually seeing that, and it has created a new alternative income stream. I mean, look at us today. Pre-COVID, we would have probably been doing this all in person, and we would have been very skeptical if someone had said, let's have a conference online. There'll be so many different discussions. People won't attend, this, that, the technology. Look at us today. Shows are happening online. Yes, there are loads of question marks about can it be better, but it's striving for people to up the level and come up with new formulas, new systems. We're seeing the technologies improve. The first kind of Zooms, conferences we've all been in, if we remember how shoddy and awful they were in comparison today, we can see how things have developed. So that's how I see what's going on in terms of with artists, with the music, with the opportunities that are coming around. People are thinking outside of the box. And when things kind of gradually stabilize, when we get to whatever our new normal will be, I believe some of these business models will still be there, and they'll go stronger and stronger and become alternative income streams for artists, for businesses, etc. going forward.
Absolutely. And just to echo the points that you guys were making, Spotify has seen a surge in releases where every day 60,000 new songs are uploaded, which just shows that the creativity is out there. People, and I think every single person on this call is really democratizing access, where before streaming, there was gatekeepers that you could not get into these type of places before. But now that's been fully kind of torn down, and it's because of the great work that people, like so many people on this call, as well as others, are doing. And it's definitely, I'm excited for this next journey, because even we've seen new business models develop in COVID, where NFTs, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but Bilal, who's a big EDM DJ, sold $11 million worth of digital collectible assets about a week and a half ago, which is better than any musician has ever done in a day in history. So it's definitely an exciting time to be a creator.
Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This last year was a big slap for all of us, and yeah, definitely. Diego, would you like to go now to answer?
Sure. I mean, my colleagues here on this virtual stage have done an incredible job explaining the changes that have happened. So if I could echo one part, I would go back to something that Dan was talking about, which is kind of the opportunity around COVID, if we can even think about it like that. I mean, we've all mentioned all of the incredibly sad sides of COVID, and it's something that I'm sure all of us discuss on a daily basis, and I'm terribly sorry that that has been the case. If you can flip that coin and look at the other side, the opportunity has been, just like Dan was saying, an ability for a lot of people to hone in on a craft that maybe they didn't even know they possessed. Time that they've been able to invest in something. You always talk about the kind of 10,000 hours that you have to put into a new hobby or a new passion of yours to really be able to master it. I think those 10,000 hours have really been, some of those 10,000 hours have been available to a lot of people who suddenly are joining in the music industry. And I think that's incredibly exciting for all of us on this panel today, which who are providing services for those exact artists. And then another thing that Dan said, I sound like the big Dan hype machine here, but a lot of good points there. But another good thing was, I think, you know, how the space has leveled out. And back to one of the things I said during my introductory or during my previous conversation, I think it has flattened the space a little bit. The lower and medium end of the spectra are producing such incredible amounts of content that it's leveling the playing field in terms of revenues, which is incredibly exciting. So I think it's really posing a large challenge to the industry, and I'm not entirely sure that the majors are having the same kind of the shift is a little bit slower than the big Napster and the big kind of the Pirate Bay drop was. It was so quick, so significant. This is a little bit slower, and I'm wondering if the majors are totally understanding that the rug is being swept away from underneath their feet. So we'll see how it goes, but I'm obviously very excited for the creative community as a result of all of this.
Thank you, Diego. Definitely, the landscape is flattening, which leads me to the next question. With the lack of live music events, where do you see artists seeking alternative financing stream? What does this say about traditional music and artist financing? Adam, would you like to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a lot of movement in the financing space with different types of advances that are types of debt instruments and revenue shares that some of the different distribution platforms are offering. But also what I built AmplifyX for is to create a new type of model where fans can actually invest into musicians for a piece of their future royalties. And I think that's a really interesting model because we're seeing this revolution of the retail investor where people are putting money into stocks for the first time with things like GameStop and AMC happening, as well as cryptocurrencies having the biggest bull market ever. And I think I've seen stats that about 20% of US citizens own some sort of cryptocurrency, which is insane to think about. But I think we're going to just see more and more interest in alternative assets. And I think music is a great space because of streaming. It's growing again as the industry as a whole enters new ways to monetize. And like Diego was saying, it's really the barriers are broken down, where Daniel Ek had a very famous quote that it's not the top 40 anymore. It's the top 43,000, where of 90% of Spotify's plays come from 43,000 unique artists. up from 30,000 just a year ago, which is pretty incredible to see.
Dan, the hype machine, would you like to go now?
I'm the hype machine, by the way. Dan is the one that deserves all hyping.
Okay.
That's true. That is true. No, I agree with what Adam's saying. I think, yeah, we're living in this time of Robin Hood where retail investment has been fully democratized. And you're seeing, general upward trend in financial literacy. People know how to spend their money and what's going to see a return. So, yeah, I think platforms like AmplifyX are incredibly exciting. I mean, you as a fan can become financially involved with your favorite artists. Like that's it's a game changer. You used to buy a record or buy a T-shirt or a ticket, and that was your way of showing appreciation for these artists. But now you have a financial interest in their career taking off, and depending on how big your stake is, or you might even start actively helping that artist to grow their career because it's in your interest to do so. And I think that completely changes the dynamic of all these different elements, cultural, like I think you're going to see people come in from other industries that really want to be involved. And yeah, I think that dynamic is incredible and super exciting. And I think, this space is going to definitely blow up for sure.
Yeah, echoing on top of that, I mean, in the African space, it's really exciting out there because we've almost, prior to COVID, prior to everything else that we all take for granted in the West, in Africa, we have had to navigate a terrain against all the odds. So our mindset, we're wired different. COVID is COVID, but we're already exploring, artists have to finance their careers already through so many different avenues, because it's only last week or was it last week or the week before, Spotify announced its presence in Nigeria. But even with all these major players coming into the market space, the reality is, when you look at the bottom end line, the revenues they're still generating from those regions are still relatively very low. However, it's exciting because the numbers, the youth population is ridiculous. I mean, Nigeria alone is like what, 2 billion, just under 2 billion people. 70–80% of that is youth driven. We're seeing more stable economies where we're seeing situations where purchasing data is the bundles prices are dropping. The mobile telephone companies who were driving the business model some 10 years ago, they have developed much more informed music business specialists within their teams. So there's so many different things that are changing. We see investment from banks, we see investments from drink companies, we see investments from local bakeries. So artists out there are already being very, very imaginative in terms of how they decipher navigating just within the country before we get to the point where we're making enough noise that the international community is hearing us. We've already been innovative through so many different obstacles. So for us, in most cases, we look at the West and we almost kind of laugh at you guys all of a sudden now struggling a bit when you're experiencing all of these things. In Africa, in Nigeria, half of the time the light's not on and we're having to still navigate and make everything happen. So it's like, guys, welcome to our world. Wake up. It's
nailed it.
Yeah. Thank you, Ikechukwu. So Diego,
I think one of the things to remember in all of this excitement about, to the point of Ikechukwu's reality introduction that he just gave us, if you just look at the world right now, a lot of people are just entering the music industry. whether they are in Nigeria or whether they are brand new artists who discovered the trade of music during the pandemic time, a lot of people are entering the music industry. To them, streaming royalties is actually an alternative income, an alternative revenue source that they never had before. So as excited I am about stuff like what Adam is doing, and there are many or more services like that. A Swedish company would be Cowherd. Shout out to my friends at Cowherd. But you know, there are services that are innovating in this space. But to the majority of the people, even being paid for your music is innovative. So let's just put a pin there and just be excited about that. Music is generating revenues. Yes, that's fantastic. It wasn't always like that. And then as far as kind of the innovation in the space goes, I mean, the fact that music is now a revenue generating asset, completely non-correlated to what else is going on in the world. I mean, if there's a stock crash or whatever, it's not like people are going to stop listening to Ojuwa Legba or whatever fantastic song they like. That means that it's a really interesting asset. So you have all of these companies out there, whether they're family offices or hedge funds or venture capital firms or whatever, who are looking at the music space and wondering where the heck they can place their money. And I think what's interesting is that there are fewer and fewer places to put that money. The number of kind of independent assets in the market are shrinking. AWOL just got scooped up by iKechukwu and his gang, or the Sony bosses, and now suddenly there's not so much left to place money in if you want to be able to grab these independent rights as they start to pop up in the space. So I think it's there's definitely going to be a bunch of opportunities here. But I think, just to tie it back and just pitch my own service really quickly, I think, a service like Fast Forward, which we launched prior to Corona, is a good example of how this revenue-bearing asset can now be useful for more people in the space. So I think we're going to see more stuff based on the idea of music as being a revenue-generating asset.
Got it right this time. So from your side, from the orchard, what will be the different financing sources that you provide to artists? You mentioned something about being innovative, imaginative, and so on. But artists need this type of financing resources to launch albums, tracks, and so on. Could you tell us about it?
Yeah, I mean, the very first thing I would say is when I'm operating in my space and when I'm engaging with artists, it's important that you have to put it in context of the naira to the pound right now is about 500-600 to 1. So when you now start discussing with artists who all of a sudden you are now talking, I can give you 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, whatever it might be. By the time they convert that to the local currency, all of a sudden they are overwhelmed with a significant amount of money. And just like anything, if you don't have money management skills, you can easily, we see it happen to sports people every day. So for me, myself, I kind of go out on a different limb when I'm discussing finance and offering financial opportunities. There has to, I'm looking at the artists, I'm looking at the project, I'm looking at the teams that are around him or her, because those teams become crucial in controlling, utilizing the funds to do what has to be done. With the orchard, yes, we're seeing, and not just the orchard, a number of distribution companies these days are all of a sudden offering advances, and it's very important to highlight to the artists and their representatives that first and foremost we are distribution companies. So let's not mistake us for taking on the role of a record company who would own your masters, the old formula. They would own whatever it is they're owning, hence their huge investments. So when you come to us and you give us a sexy budget and with all the list of all these things you want to do, I tend to look at the realistic position of the artist in terms of within the market space. What are the goals for that project over that particular period of time? And then what is realistic we can add to in terms of financial value, in terms of expertise, knowledge value, things that you can't necessarily, you should always, when you're doing your accounting, put a value on it. Even if you're getting it for free, there is a value associated with that normally you would pay for. So it's about listing all of those things and not just, I'm not going to mention any names, I've seen too many companies come into Africa and just feel we're just going to splash money at this. And we all know those companies, and you can go and look at the track records, and Africa will suck your money out of you. We're not all a bunch of illiterates or living in the trees or whatever. As you have loads of very, very shrewd operators, and if they feel you're coming in just trying to flash your dollar, your yen sign, your pound sign, we will take you for granted, and then we'll say, okay, you're ready to go back to where you're going, because it's about coming. I see Dan laughing over there. It's about really coming into the market and understanding your value proposition, understanding the African value proposition, and then finding the right teams or helping to put the right teams around artists so that when you are offering these advances, money, expertise, training is so important. You can invest all the money you want to invest in Africa into anyone, into any business. If there isn't the proper understanding over there, then you're almost flogging a dead horse. So we invest a lot of time in training to prepare people so that they have the necessary skills to handle a number of different types of business opportunities. Because at the end of the day, once all of these international companies decide to leave Africa, or when Africa is no longer the flavor of the month, it's left down to us, people like myself who are working for these international corporations. The type of deals I tie artists to is the reputation that I'm going to be left with within the continent to deal with, and that's my reputation.
Wow.
So it's about really finding that perfect balance.
Yeah, thank you so much for your answer. Now I would like to go to Adam. What's your take on this subject?
Yeah, I think that let me frame, I think of artists like startups. They are just companies, and you can finance them like companies, but just like I would not give capital to a company that doesn't have a finance strategy in place or a marketing budget and a business plan. I think that artists need the right teams around them and the right support and education systems around them in order to be successful. Because I think it just really, and would love to talk, iKechukwu, a lot more about how you guys educate artists, because that's something that we're looking at with Amplify. Of how do we actually bring this education and close that gap in knowledge of how do you actually purchase ads for promotional purposes? How much of your budget should go to the actual content creation versus the marketing and things like that? And I think it's really bridging that education barrier, but then also I think Kanye West had a very great quote where he said, artists shouldn't have managers, they should have CEOs. Because they are businesses. So, and then he made a parallel that when is his friend Travis Scott going to IPO? Like his friend Drew at Dropbox did. And I think thinking about artists like that is so interesting because they are really the creative directors of companies. And putting those right people alongside them is how we're going to see success.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, sorry, just to interject, but yeah, I think what Diego was saying before about you've got these like reliable revenue sources through streaming that are pandemic proof, that are almost like bonds. You really can look at these artists as companies. You can invest in them in the same way. You've got a reliable revenue source, and you can make bets against that. I think it is super interesting, and I think the education is a big part of it. How do you educate people to get to the right place where people will feel confident in investing in them? And yeah, I mean, for example, also to plug Tunecore a little bit, we just released an educational program that's open to pretty much everyone. It's still in like the early stages of beta. We beta tested it and it's starting to open up, but it is really to help train you on all aspects of your career to help kind of, get to the next level, get to a place where people will want to invest money with you so that you can actually start making some real moves. We have Tunecore Direct Advance, which means if you reach a certain level of income, which is I think about $5,000 a year, Lyric Financial, who powers our advances, will start to make offers to you in terms of advances. Also, we're owned by Believe. We were acquired by Believe a couple of years ago, who are probably closer to a competitor to The Orchard. And what happens with Tunecore is artists start to get upstreamed to Believe. So as they start to get momentum, 260 of our artists in the past have been upstreamed. They still maintain all their ownership and all of that, but then Believe in the way that in the same way that iKechukwu was saying, they can start to make more educated bets on people, bigger bets on people. So yeah, I think Tunecore is a nice environment in the sense that it's the best parts of Believe and Orchard all under one roof in some way.
That's the best plug of the
There
night.
There we go.
We like that little plug there.
Yes.
Thank you.
Had to do it.
I think the beauty of everything is, though, look, for me, first and foremost, as an African, I am excited to see more diverse players entering the market, because what it means is no one has a monopoly. What it means is the artist has more choices. The artist can make much more informed decisions, as opposed to, oh, we're the only player in town, so it's either you take what we're offering or leave. And at the same time, it forces us as competitors to improve our offer. And that can only be, we all say we're all in it for the artist. We're all in it. We always sing it's all about the artist, all about the artist. So let's start, whilst competition is healthy, but whilst competing, let's really have the artist's welfare in mind. And I know kind of somewhere down the line we've got the conversation around SoundCloud, but that's a perfect example of putting your money where your mouth is as a company and really doing something that's going to champion artists.
Thank you all for your answers. Now I will pass on the mic to my friend Chai. She will be moderating the second block of this panel. Thank you
so much, Juan, and to our speakers for being here with us today. So I would like to address next the topic of user-centric payment, who is increasingly getting support from streaming platforms, as Alexis, the Gemini CEO of Deezer France, highlighted yesterday. And we also recently saw SoundCloud doing that. So I would like to ask you, what do you think of this approach? Which team are you, pro-rata or user-centric?
Wow, that's an interesting way of putting it. I don't know if I have answered it that way to myself. And without being an absolute expert at how the different models strike, depending on if you're a small artist independently, who independently distributes, or if you're a major artist signed by a major, I think the question is, for me, has always been much less about how that model looks and much more about who else is making money in the value chain. Because Spotify are kicking out an Apple too, who are still on the traditional, if you can call it a traditional business model. But I mean, they're kicking out tons and tons and tons of money. I mean, absolute incredible amounts of money are entering the music, or is being paid back to creators around the world. The challenge that caused me to start Amuse, made it sound negative. Obviously, it was a fantastically cool experience. But the reason why I wanted to start Amuse was to kind of address this challenge. And that challenge was that there are too many people between the artist and that Spotify or Apple Music payout that are charging money in ways that are absolutely ridiculous. I'm talking about ways that are so antiquated, contract structures that are absolutely ridiculous. That's one part of it. The second part of it is all of the kind of prerequisites and stuff that have been entered into the contracts with the DSPs by the major labels to further complicate our understanding for where the money is flowing and how it's flowing. So I think for me, it's much less about which of these models do we use, and much more about addressing the kind of fundamental challenges that the industry faces, which is a lack of transparency in terms of reporting of money, which can only be done due to historical power structures that are stopping independent artists from fully understanding the picture. So that would be my answer, and I'm sorry, Shai, for not fully answering your question. I hope perhaps one of the other colleagues here can do a better job at that.
Thank you so much, Diego. Adam, do you have a certain position in regards to that?
I think what SoundCloud's doing is really pushing the envelope and really interesting. I think time's going to tell what the actual results look like and speak for themselves, because frankly, I don't know if we have enough data yet to make which is right and which is wrong. But I think it's good that we are trying these new experiments to see if, hey, does this create a more equitable model? So instead of Drake getting paid like 60 million, he makes 50 million, and then all these other artists make a lot more. I think that there is like some give and take. So I think it's a really great experiment that we're doing.
In my territory, this is now me speaking for the entire continent, it's provided a number of African countries can benefit from it. It's of immense value to us. I mean, all of a sudden, you're going to see African artists that have been outside of the obvious ones, your Wizkids, your David O's, your Burna Boys, the ones that everyone knows. They're African artists within certain territories where they're getting 50, 60, 100 million, kind of impressions on their end. But because of circumstances, when it comes down to the money being shared, it's going all one particular direction. So for us on a continent, all of a sudden, we're going to start seeing more and more money. All of a sudden, that's all that Africa is going to be seeing right now. More and more money. It's going to be stabilizing itself more and more. And it's the majors and the big artists, the ones that are currently enjoying the lion's share. They're the ones who will have more of an issue with this. But for the rest of us, we're all about shaking up the industry and revolutionizing the entire game.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Yeah, I think I agree with Adam in the sense that it's kudos to SoundCloud for going out a limb and trying it first. Like, that's awesome. I think it's a little too early to say what's going to happen, but hopefully it does pay off. But I think that's a super interesting point in the sense that emerging markets where you've got more nuance listening to local content, you might actually see more money stay in that country than go out, which I actually think is a really interesting way to look at it. I had never thought about it that way. I think that, it'll be great to see if that is the truth or that ends up happening.
So by having so many independent artists under their umbrella, especially after the pandemic where artists are at home actively releasing new songs, distribution platform could be considered as one of the first to have access to growth patterns thanks to royalties management. Would you say that you are the first players in the industry to detect hit songs?
Well, I mean, that's what Amuse was built to do. I mean, we only do distribution because we want to find hit songs. We didn't wake up one day and think, wow, wouldn't it be cool if we did distribution? So for us, my answer would be a very resounding yes. But obviously, nowadays, there are additional players whose only purpose is to try to detect hits. And I think the differences in the two services is what I can add to the conversation. So you can go to a service that scrapes information, publicly available information. You can do whatever you want with that information. It will give you an indication of where things are going. Or you can be on the distribution side or the label side, where we are, for example, and get much more granular information that can truly be trusted if you know what you're looking for and if you know how to build models around it. So I think the challenge for the industry is what every industry has always been. There's always going to be some snake salesman down the road who has something really cool that they want to sell to you. And because no one really knows what's in that potion, they might end up buying that product. But what I would advise people to do is to, I don't know, be a little bit inquisitive about the proposition of people who are scraping publicly available data, because its reliability might or might not be very exact. So the answer would be yes. Distributors are definitely the first layer of identifying emerging hits.
Definitely. I mean, I'm happy to take from it. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think the only people that probably are detecting hits quicker than the distributors might be the DSPs or social media platforms themselves, because there's got to be some lag in information transfer. But yeah, I think they can detect hits, but they've got to be tried in the market. And, you know, you've got to see that reaction happening. There's the whole cultural component, I think, that's super important. You've got hits in the past that should maybe have been hits, but were never hits and never took off. And I think the cultural implications, the relevance, you know, you see tracks on TikTok now. You can have a song recorded on an iPhone that historically would be unlistenable on radio, but have, you know, it has huge cultural relevance to people on TikTok and can explode. So yeah, I think distributors are definitely positioned to detect that first, but I guess it's got to be, to Diego's point, like distributors have to provide access to these platforms first for them to be able to take off. And I think there's value in that rather than just scraping information from people.
I agree with what both Diego and Dan have said, so there's no point in echoing anything different.
My first question goes to you, Adam, who your company, AmplifyX, allows investors to directly invest in artists. How can investors anticipate the returns that they will get? How can they be sure it's a safe investment?
So I think due to SEC and FINRA legislation, I've got to say, hey, all crowdfunding investments are highly speculative and there's no guarantees of outcomes. But we've partnered with the company Chartmetric, which I'm sure everybody on this call probably knows about, to provide as much data as possible to the investors so they can make informed decisions. And we also, if available, we give historic data where we also cannot exactly say it's going to be consistent, but some of the other people on this call have shown like, hey, streaming catalogs and streaming revenues can be pretty well modeled. And we're seeing players like Hypnosis, who's a publicly traded company in the UK, spend over $1 billion acquiring royalty assets at about 14 times their trailing 12-month revenue. So when you see that much institutional activity, I think it's a sign that, hey, this is something that we should look at as retail investors. And I think platforms like Diego said, like Co-Write, like AmplifyX, and other platforms that allow you to actually invest into this asset class are going to be really interesting to look at as a way to diversify your portfolio in the future.
Question is general question, so please feel free to jump in.
I can just say investing into future music rights, it has always been speculative. I don't think that it's a challenge that's unique for Adam and AmplifyX. I mean, I think what they're doing is try to minimize that risk, or at least lower the risk a little bit by providing all this historical data that perhaps, or that I can guarantee you that most A&Rs in more traditional labels don't even use nowadays. So I think you have to think about the music industry in one of two ways. Some people can do both. In one way, you're looking at it as something that you can impact and influence. It's passion driven. It's driven by a desire or a willingness to participate in the industry. In the second, perhaps, it's more of a data-based game. And if you want to approach it from a data-based aspect, then probably not invest in something that still hasn't materialized, i.e. a future song. Then your money is probably better placed in the Hypnosis Fund or something like that, which is investing into historical rights, which is similar to what we are doing with our royalty advance systems. We're investing into existing rights, so it creates a higher level of certainty in our ability to get our money returned to us. So if you want to place your money into something because you're passionate about it, then I definitely urge you to go to a place like Adam's and invest in talent that you really want to see succeed, and then participate in that work too by promoting them and helping them out. But if you're only doing it to get your money back, then it might be a little bit short-sighted in some cases, I would say.
Completely agree, and I think it's a great way to include the consumer in the music creation process, if you will.
Agreed.
My next question, in terms of artist retention, there's no denying that the digital space is ever changing. Who knows when the next TikTok, Instagram, when will it come? How are you ensuring that you're staying relevant? iKechukwu, would you like to begin?
Well, I can only speak, the Orchard is a global company, but my interests are focused in one particular region, which is Africa. And in Africa, we're reinventing the wheel out there. So how would I approach that? How would I approach that question? Sorry, do you mind just giving me the question again, please?
Yes, of course. How are you ensuring that you will stay relevant with constant changes in the digital space?
Well, first and foremost, in terms of staying relevant within the digital space, within the African space as well, it really comes down to, first, your service, your value proposition, being aware of what the competition is doing, and in some cases not taking the bait in terms of what the competition's doing, and staying true to your course. You've got to be clear on your agenda, and your agenda has to have the right intentions. When I'm looking at myself in terms of staying relevant within the market space, it's about the relationships I'm building. Yes, we're digital companies, but we're dealing with human beings first and foremost. And you can get so caught up in positions and dissociate yourself from the street, from the pulse, from the needs of the people. When it comes to making music work in Africa, and this is something I say to everyone that's interested in coming into the space. Yes, it's another form of black music, but it's not like hip hop. It's not like grime. It's not like reggae in the sense of, these are all forms of music which have already been adapted in the West. You have representatives from all races, all sexes, operating in those spaces. In Africa, you have to understand the culture, the food, the language, the religion, the passion, the people. And there's so much diversity out there. So when I'm talking about, when I'm looking at how I stay relevant, I stay true to my people, to the cultures, to the language, and really try to understand, putting their needs first, and then trying to communicate that to the company I represent in terms of these are the needs of the people on ground. And this is how I advise we mold our infrastructure to complement the needs of the people on ground. And that's how I stand different from my competitors within the space, who might just be going in with, they're just after market share. And it's, for me, that's the wrong approach. I don't know if that fully answers the question, but it's how I look at operating in Africa and staying relevant, being true to the people and understanding that they are there as much to educate me as I am to educate them. It's an exchange. It's not me just coming in because I'm in this position and I'm the decoy to buy up the market. No, it's really about understanding the needs of my people and making sure that's represented at the highest level.
Thank you, Ike. I agree. I think building relationships is what makes the difference, especially with artist financing. Dan, my next question goes to you is, how are you adapting to constant new trends? TikTok, or can you use TikTok to discover new artists?
How do I personally use TikTok?
How Tunecore?
Right. Okay. I think to the trends. I mean, there's lots of ways. I think, yeah. What's great about Tunecore is that what we promise, we have no doubt that we can kind of deliver upon. We promise access. I feel like, yeah, Diego is probably in a very similar boat. Access to a bunch of stores, so to be able to get your music onto TikTok. Find the most promising up and coming stores, so the next TikTok. Get favorable terms with those stores so that artists who upload it to that new store are getting the most favorable terms and getting the best rates. And we also facilitate the delivery of all of those assets cleanly to that DSP. We also do, we aggregate data and analytics to make sure that everybody's got equal access to those kind of stats about their music and to learn about their music. And also we account to those artists in one super simple kind of way. I think that's the way, we are on top of those stores as they come in and making sure that artists have access to those stores. And as a result, we very much meet the expectations of a lot of our clientele in that sense.
Just out of curiosity, are you guys collecting royalties from TikTok currently?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And are all digital distributors collecting? Because I knew initially it was just some are pushing it onto the actual platform, but then I saw a few indie labels and some distributors had reached agreements, but I don't think everybody has.
I don't think you can get your music on there nowadays without an agreement. So I think if any service is currently getting the music into TikTok, it's based on some type of an agreement. Exactly what that agreement looks like, I couldn't tell you. But, yeah.
I think they got in trouble. Yeah, they're going to get in trouble if they don't do it
exactly.
legally. So yeah, they need to.
So much, guys. We have 2 questions from the audience. Let me introduce my colleague Juan, who will ask them for me. Thank you so much. Pleasure to have you.
Hello. Thank you very much. I have a question. We have a question from Dylan Brian, who asks, where do you think that technology can be more utilized in the music industry?
Whoa. Dylan, is Dylan the only guy there? He's been asking all sorts of questions. Dylan, you need a hobby, man. The music industry can't be everything. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I love the engagement into this. Thanks, Dylan. I mean, that question is so incredibly broad. It's just remarkable. But The way I would address it is that I came into the music industry with a tech background. I didn't come in from I wasn't a musician or a band member or anything like that. My firm belief is that technology can add value on practically everything related to music. With that said, technology can't replace everything in the music industry, but it can most likely provide value. In certain parts, it can, become the only solution. In others, it might be a complement to what you do. But my simple and quick answer would be it can influence and impact every aspect of music.
Yeah, a classic example is look at Africa right now. Technology is changing the game, and it's why you guys are hearing us much more aggressively from so many different avenues. We're in your face. We've always been here. I mean, I remember back in like 2005, we used to, this was when I was still living in the UK. We would have concerts happening in the UK that were packing out the O2, packing out Wembley. And it was oblivious to the UK music industry, because when they look at all their avenues for communication and how they promote concerts and tours, we weren't using none of those. We were using technology that the West had invented, but just using it differently. What do I mean by that? We were selling out these concerts by using Facebook. I mean, we weren't running radio ads on mainstream radio. Facebook. In Nigeria, as I mentioned earlier, there are 36 states. In the UK, in Germany, in France, in America, in Belgium, you get the picture. Those 36 states are represented through central organizations. You know, in the UK, we have it, CANUC, Central Association for Nigerians in the UK. And each one of those 36 states have their own Facebook pages. So when we're planning our concerts, you people in the West, you're spending all of this big digital billboards and all of that kind of stuff. We're just doing a Facebook ad and sending it through CANUC, and it's hitting all the Nigerians, all the Ghanaians, all the Congolese, all of this. We're packing out the arenas. People are watching, going, what is going on here? How are they making this happen? We're using social media. So it's 10 years, 15 years later now. There's so much that's going on technology-wise, and Africa is so advanced in terms of how we're using technologies that you guys have created, because you have to appreciate you guys already have a systems that have been in place for so long. They're so traditional, they're so entrenched, whereas for us, we are really reinventing the wheel. And that's what's making it very, 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 very exciting. The last thing I would say about this is we don't need the West in order to survive anymore. We have millions of Africans who live in the diaspora, and we are communicating them from the continent daily through technology. And that's how we are selling, and that's why we are a force to be reckoned with, and we are changing the landscape of the music industry through technology.
Here.
Yeah, love that. I reckon I could listen to iKechukwu talk about Africa for literally days. I love it. It's so good. But I totally agree. I really do think looking at emerging markets, I mean, one of my best friends works in sustainability in Africa, and they are, gas is a big issue. They use a lot of different alternative ways of cooking, but they're coming up with these. It's true. They're skipping over the problems that are embedded in Western society in these systems that we have, and it's hard to move forward. Africa's jumping over that. They're just completely jumping over it and making new technology. So I do absolutely believe, like, looking at emerging markets as far as how they've overcome some of these issues is super fascinating, and like we absolutely have things to learn from a lot of these countries.
Definitely. Thank you so much. It is Africa's time to shine. Well, unfortunately, this amazing panel is coming to an end. I want to thank all the panelists for their astonishing discussion and insightful comments, and we hope we can have you with us for future events.